afternoon here. We have a conversation on the Dominican Republic and some of its modernization process, particularly on the subject matter of customs. I'm pleased to have Ambassador Maria Isabel Castillo Baez, who will be welcoming you into her house, the Inter-American Dialogue. El diálogo ha sido un socio muy importante, un amigo muy importante de República Dominicana. In many ways, we have a long-standing relationship for 3 decades, perhaps. And I'm happy to welcome Roberto Álvarez, Canciller de la República Dominicana, who has been also a very close colleague and very involved in dialogue events and dialogue activities, trying to push an inter-American agenda from the United States. Embajadora.
Gracias, Manuel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the Inter-American Dialogue, the entire team, for hosting us this afternoon. It is for me an immense pleasure to welcome Director Eduardo Sanz Lovatón to Washington and to give these opening remarks in today's discussion, which, let me say, cannot be more timely. I know we are all aware that we are living very rapidly changing economic times. Our global economy is evolving quickly and erratically. And as we speak, we are in the process of reimagining supply chains. And the countries that act the fastest and with purpose would be the countries that lead the way. And that is exactly what the Dominican Republic has been doing, especially from our customs agency. And I am sure that the discussion that we are going to be having this afternoon is going to shed light into what the country has been doing, the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead. So in general terms, I see that almost the entire table are Dominicans, so I would not need to express this, but the Dominican Republic, and I'm saying this for all those of you who are not Dominican, is the fastest growing economy in the region. And when I say the region, I am not referring to the Caribbean. I am referring to the Americas. So we must have been doing something right. Of course, our strategic location in the very center of the Caribbean plays a big role in this success, but there are many other factors involved, including our legal framework, including our economic progress that has been sustained for decades now. So in short, and to not extend these introductory words very much, I would like to finish by saying that even though we are in a privileged position, right now we are also facing challenges. The global demand has increased. The rise of e-commerce and competition as well has increased. And this faces challenges, which I am sure that today will be underscored here by Director Sanz Lovatón. I invite you to listen closely to this discussion and discover how the Dominican Republic is no longer merely aspiring, but in fact, acting to become the center of regional economic transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And indeed, the Dominican Republic is not just a formality or a euphemism, that it's been growing significantly. I mean, this year, perhaps the Dominican Republic will be the country in the Western Hemisphere that will have the highest economic growth rate in 2025. Minding Argentina's reported growth rate after a huge economic recession, the Dominican Republic basically comes second as the fastest growing country in the Western Hemisphere. And it has shown significant, not just resilience, but as an economic spirit to continue growing in different regards, in foreign investment, in trade, in remittances, with a formidable diaspora, which is also distinct in many ways, insofar as the Dominicans, particularly those in the United States, but also those in Europe, tend to show a very strong sense of belonging and returning into the homeland after they retire, which has been a significant experience in that they contribute to their economy. Once they return, they continue investing in their home country. And I have to say, from a political standpoint, the Dominican Republic is perhaps one of the most politically stable countries and the least politically difficult countries in the Western Hemisphere today. Apart from Uruguay, the Dominican Republic, we are faced with so many political challenges in the Western Hemisphere that is so glad to have the DR really displaying experiences of judicial security, a fast-growing democracy, and fast-growing economy. So we are pleased to have Eduardo Sanz Lovatón speaking with us today, because to a large extent, some of the economic growth that this country is experiencing is related to its trade. And a lot of the trade involves the role of customs. And there is a modernization process that I think is very important to learn and hear from Eduardo. So my first question to you, you're at home, so please.
First of all, there are a lot of people who may not recognize Peter Hakem, who has arrived this afternoon, but Peter Hakem is a president emeritus of the Inter-American Dialogue, a great friend of the Americas, a great friend of the Dominican Republic, and we appreciate your presence here today, this afternoon, Peter. Wonderful to see you. And secondly, I think it's important that I inform everyone that the Security Council of the UN just approved the resolution that was proposed by the United States and Panama, transforming the MSS, the mission supporting the Haitian police, into a gang suppression force and the creation of a 5,500 member force of that. This is a huge step forward, over which we've been spending with the US and other allies a great deal of effort in getting it across the finish line. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't.
Not at all. Thank you very much, and definitely very good news for a troubled region right now. So, Eduardo, let me just open with a general question. We just seen the Dominican Republic growing in so many ways, taking a leading position in the world. How would you describe the relationship of the Dominican Republic in the world with the United States, its relationship with Haiti, and with other players, including the People's Republic of China? Just a general reflection on these issues.
Well, first of all, good afternoon. I want to please express my gratitude to the Inter-American Dialogue in the persons of Mr. Orozco and also Mr. Peter Hesketh I also want to say, express my thankfulness to the whole team in the Dominican Ministry of Foreign Relations, who's headed by a robust intellectual that just announced incredible news for the Latin American community and for the world. And I know because I have been close to his work, and I know that has a lot of imprint in the name of Roberto Alvarez. So I would like to give him a hand for that. Also, our ambassador, Maria Isabel Castillo Baez, whom has the honor to represent us here in this great country, and I know that is and will be doing a great job. To my friends from AmCham DR that are here in the person of its president, my friend Francesca Ranieri, and with that, to all of you here, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to tell the story of a country who has embraced logistic as its new great industry. When people think about the Dominican Republic's economy, a few things come to mind. If you're a baseball fan, but of course that you would think about our baseball players, but we also are famous for our sugarcane industry, for our tobacco. We're also famous for our cacao. And of course, we are a tourism powerhouse. And we have been a tourism powerhouse for many decades now. Some of you here, the Dominicans represented here, are invested in the tourism industry. Just to say Francesca's name is to mention tourism. So that's what people think of us, and that has fueled a GDP growth that has put the Dominican Republic in the first growing economy in Latin America for decades. When President Abinader came into office now a little bit over 5 years, we have tried to initiate a new mechanisms to generate new developments in economic growth and in economic investment. And the whole world changed after COVID-19 and also with the geopolitical rivalries that came along with it. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, the most important problem when you examine the supply chain that the biggest economies in the world, the US, the European Union, and others were reflecting was everybody wanted cheap products, that were produced in cheap labor. Also, you were in the middle of the Cold War, so you wanted, in a way, to help China to alienate it from what was then the Soviet Union, and we can remember Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger's famous visit to China in order to, so everybody wanted those exports from China and wanted the cheap labor. After COVID-19 and different things, the greatest economies in the world have realized that you don't want your supply chain to depend from faraway places. Because here we have a big representative of the Dominican maritime industry. And they know that before COVID-19, you would pay $2 or $3 grand for transporting merchandise from China to the Americas. After COVID-19, that went as high as $25,000 for what we call el flete, or transportation cost. So that hit in the face of the greatest economy. So the supply chain initiative became an issue. And that's when the word or the concept nearshoring became a thing. And the other thing is friendly shoring. You also want your supply chain to not be dependent on a political rival, on a geopolitical rival, or an economic competitor. So the Dominican Republic had those two things going for it. You have the geographical opportunity. You also have the friendly, as Manuel was describing. We are a country that has had political stability going on 50 years. We have a peaceful demeanor. We are a welcoming country. Our tourism industry has grown exponentially because we are fun-loving people and we're welcoming. That applies to tourists, but that also applies to investment. So when we came into office with President Abinader, we faced this reality, but with certain challenges. Our legal framework for international trade was from 1942. I'm not kidding you. That was the last time we had legislation changed in foreign trade. And we have here like we have 3 congressmen that are with us in this delegation, and also 2 congresswomen that are here and that worked very hard in that legislative change. And we have now a foreign trade law or customs law that was promulgated in 2021 and has been regulated in 2022, 2023. So we have a new legal framework that when foreign companies want to think where they can install their factories, where they can exchange or have their logistical centers in order to redistribute merchandise all over the American continent, they look at us and they see a legal framework they can compare to theirs. The other thing we did was we embraced technology with our working. When we came into office, only 40% of the merchandise going in and out of our docks and airports was reviewed by technology, X-ray technology, artificial intelligence technology. Now, 96% of everything that comes in and out of our country is reviewed by X-ray machines, by custom softwares that are developed in accordance to the standards of the United States and the European Union. So those two things, those two changes have transformed foreign trade in the DR. And I'll give you some numbers. When we came into office, the Dominican Republic exported, on an average, $700 million a month. We are now exporting, on average, $1.3 billion a month. That's an increment of $500 million a month in less than 5 years. That is exponential growth. The same thing, we have also incremented our revenue that has avoided us or has postponed the urgency on fiscal reforms and other things because we have had a super avid or an excess of our revenues that have allowed the Dominican economy to be reviewed by the risk agencies like Moody's and like other of the big rating agencies who have increased the qualification of the Dominican economy. So in a sense, that has created a virtual circle that has generated large amounts of investment into the DR. 2019, 2018, the Dominican economy received foreign direct investment around $3.5 billion. 2024, we received in excess of $5.5 billion. That's an increment of $2 billion in less than 5 years. That is also a reflection on how the world is looking at us. Also, we have tracked down for the last 20 years. That was also another one of the great gestures that we have had under our current Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Dominican Republic had been singled out by the State Department of the United States for infringement in intellectual property commerce. And in our administration, the work done together by President Abinader, Minister Alvarez, Minister Bisonó, and other functionaries in our government, we were excluded from that list. So we are now considered a country that you can do business with that respects international property laws. And that also puts us in the center of why people can do business with us. I was recently, and I'll tell you this, I'll finish this first part with that. I was recently in New Delhi, India, where I was invited by the custom agencies in India, and they were asking me, I didn't have enough time. It was a short trip, and believe me, it's like 40 hours on a plane, so it's a difficult trip also. But I didn't have time for all the questions they had as to how they can use our logistical industry to go into the US market, to go into the Canadian market, to go into the Brazilian market, to go into the Colombian market, because we are at the center. We have, I'll give you, and this is a study we did, William knows it well, William Malamud, who's also here. We did a combined study between Dominican Customs and AmCham DR, where we identified that the Dominican Republic has more direct flights to the United States and to the European Union than what Brazil has, than what Colombia has, than what Chile has. So, and I'll end on this note for this part. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, all cargo went through the sea, through ships. All 60% of the cargo goes through air. We have the largest air infrastructure in the whole Caribbean basin. So people can do business with the DR because we have the aerial capacity to have planes and to have cargo planes and to do all of that. And we have right now 4 international airports that already have free trade zones for those cargo businesses. Also, we're the 3rd country in the whole area where we have the best maritime capacity. And considering one of those countries is Panama that helps unite the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean, that is quite an achievement. We are the third country in the whole region that has the best installation for maritime commerce. So all of this has come together, and now the logistics, as is proven by our numbers in exports, as is proven by the foreign direct investment that is coming into the DR in new development in our dock area and also in other developments, proves that we are already a logistical center to be considered. And coupled with our tourism power, coupled with our agricultural power, we believe that the Dominican economy is a safe bet for the next 30 to 40 years. Because you take places like Singapore, you take places like Dubai, you take places like Taiwan, and they made of logistics the process in order to become developed economies. We have the logistics, but we have something they didn't have at the time. We have the tourism, and we also have the agricultural powerhouse in places like, in products like sugar, cacao, coffee, tobacco. So this is why I'm an optimist and I am an enthusiastic about the Dominican economy, about the Dominican future. And I am grateful to have been part of the transformation that Luis Abinader has led with the legal reforms and with the practical reforms and with the corruption reforms and all the things that President Abinader has accomplished. And I have been proud to be part of his team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduardo and Roberto and Ambassador. My current president says welcome and bienvenido. I tried to bring also Michael Shifter, but he had a previous commitment, so he apologized and said thank you. So we have Peter representing the three. I have survived 3 bosses, by the way. But Yayo, no, it's really impressive. I remember I've been working in the Dominican Republic, on the Dominican Republic for close to 30 years, since 1996, conducting projects on the diaspora, and including one of the key issues of the diaspora is what we call nostalgic trade, el comercio nostálgico, these things that Dominicans buy from the DR, and they spend so much money importing these things. But I remember going through customs and seeing that, yes, there were a few computers. People were actually using those big, thick books to check on the codes on how to codify a particular commodity. So it's impressive, really, to see the regulatory change, the modernization in technology, and the compliance to judicial security. And within that context, I mean, today, with all these problems going around the world, we have a neighbor, Haiti, that faces a number of problems. How do you describe the current trade relationship with Haiti? How does it happen? Haiti is significantly dependent on Dominican trade.
Well, first of all, again, I rejoice in the news just expressed by our Minister of Foreign Relations. I have been to Haiti many times. I have many Haitian friends, and their historical drama and their social condition is something that should worry every world citizen that has any kind of empathy for the human condition. That being said, trade is a resilient thing. People need to eat, people need to get clothes, and according to our studies, almost 70% of everything consumed in Haiti comes in through the Dominican trade efforts, the docks, the airports. When the tragedy of their president's assassination a couple of years ago, trade halted for a time. It was very difficult, but it is now, at this moment, it has already picked up to our last historical levels, which were around, according to our central bank, is around $150 million a month. And there is normal trade in the border. It's very well, I always say it's been an honor to work with our people from our men and women of our armed forces, because as everybody knows, the security conditions in Haiti are very unstable, and it's very difficult to work. Sometimes their customs in the northern part of the island differ from their customs in the southern part of the island. So it's always a challenge, but our men and women in uniform help us a lot. And also, the Haitian people are a peace-loving people, are hardworking people, and they do the trade with normalcy. Trade goes on with certain levels of normalcy. There's always security challenges that change from day to day. We have worked with our partners from the U.S. Embassy in the DR to try and track down everything we can to help their security efforts in order to avoid arms getting to them, in order to avoid other security issues that get to them. And we have helped with the X-ray machines that we have installed, also with the huge investment President Abinader has made in the security conditions of the border. For the first time in many years, the Dominican government has bought helicopters, has bought other technological instruments that help us guard commerce in the border, which helps Haiti in their normal condition. Just 2 weeks ago, Cesar Dargan, who's also here from the CONEP, invited a delegation of Haitian entrepreneurs that went to my office in customs, and we're helping them with their their exports and their imports into Haiti. And we're working also on, there's a project here with some other people here. Mr. Santelices, who's here, is working on a project with other Dominican entrepreneurs in order to do a dry port, like the one existing in Laredo or in Arizona. And we're going to do that in order to centralize everything that goes into Haiti, because one of the challenges we still have is that some people import with the manifest saying that it's going to Haiti, but it actually doesn't get to Haiti, and it stays somewhere on our part of the island. And that is very difficult for our economy, because it becomes disloyal competence. Because if you pay your taxes to import into our market and then someone doesn't, then they have a competitive advantage in you. So this dry port that we're working on will, and I think, and I want to say it here, I think that we all need to get that project some traction, because it'll help us in to eliminate the few areas of improvement that we still have. And I believe that the border situation anywhere in the world, you guys have an example here with Mexico, and those who have lived in Europe know all the problems they have with the Mediterranean. And borders are a constant challenge. It never ends. But these 5 years have shown how to, I think we are an example as to border trade and commerce in the most difficult situation you can imagine, which is a country governed in part by a huge insecurity general situation. So I do think there's areas of improvement, but I do think we've gotten an incredible grade on that. And I do hope that we can finish with this dry port and other initiatives that will help us along the way.
Yes, not an easy task, considering the difficult situation in Haiti and at the border too. Let me ask you, in the past 12 months, there's been a lot of reportings of penalties to businesses for illicit trade with Chinese goods. What is the scope of this problem? If it is a problem, how do we interpret it or describe it? And is it an issue of smuggling of Chinese goods? Is it an issue of unfair competition? How do we deal with that?
First of all, it is a problem, and we have to look at it in different ways. The first thing we need to say is the Dominican economy welcomes all types of investment, including the Chinese investment that have a long-standing history with our country and that have done great things in our country. There's nothing wrong with Chinese licit investment or legal investment. The problem comes when people import Chinese products that have two very difficult situations we need to take care of. One is intellectual property infringement. They import, I don't know, just to say something, Nike shoes or handbags, women handbags of certain franchises that are not actually, they don't pay the intellectual property dues that those need to pay. So that's one type of illegal competition. And the other is just simply subvaluing or undervaluing different products and different things that just hammer the Dominican economy because the taxes don't get where it need to get, and also because other legal importers pay in it, so it's illegal competition. So what these last 5 years, the problem has been put front and center. This is not new. This is a problem that has Chile, Colombia, Honduras, Mexico, Canada. If you can Google Chinese illicit trade, you can Google it. You can put Chinese illicit trade Canada, Chinese illicit trade Mexico, and you'll find the same problems. What we have done, and we have taken the leadership in the region doing this, is two things. First of all, we have integrated the fight against this illicit commerce because a lot of people, when they talk about this, they think, oh, customs. Well, it's not customs. Customs can't establish a value for a merchandise. It's actually illegal according to the free trade agreements and to the World Trade Organization and other things. What we can do is to object the value that you yourself declare. Before we came into office, you had 6 months to do that. So what they did was when they didn't agree with what customs was challenging them, they would just, and my friends from one of our most important ports that are here can attest to what I'm saying. What they used to do was just to leave the merchandise for 6 months there, and it would clot the commerce. It would be a very difficult thing. We changed the law, and now they only have 30 days, which means that on day 31, we can just simply seize the cargo, take it to our deposits, and sell it ourselves, which we have done a lot. Let me tell you that these things that I'm explaining to you have generated for the Dominican tax authorities excess of 13 billion pesos. That's almost, we're talking about $700, $800 million. So when we say this, that's one thing that we're doing. Also, we are, for the first time, integrating what you have to do with our version of the IRS. Our version of the IRS, which is the DGII, we're integrating, and for the first time in the Dominican history, we're doing combined fiscalization efforts. So that means that it doesn't matter what you declare in customs, because if you declare in customs that this cell phone is $10 and then you sell it for $100, the spread of the $90, you have to pay it in our version of the IRS. And that is the first time that is being done. So that is going to radically reduce the intelligence of trying to undervalue. Also, we have found out, because we integrated in one sole effort in our Ministry of Finance, we integrated our version of the IRS, our customs, our Minister of Works, and also our banking regulator, because a lot of these monies was in cash. And I don't know if any of you have had any experience with banks, and I know Stephen is here. I don't want to talk bad about bankers, but if you take yourself $10,000 into a bank, they're going to ask you about your grandparents. But for some reason, all this money went into the banks, and we had no regulations, and why was all this cash moving around? So we took our banking regulator and we sat them at the same table. We said, we want you to investigate this. And all this has generated a lot of information. And it's been a work of almost 2.5 years. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, there became a whole hula on the press because I said that we had declared war on illicit trade. And that got a few headlines and got a lot of people talking. But this is not new. We've been doing it for almost 4 years now. And the results are there. The results are there in the sense that we've closed businesses, that we've done a lot of things. But again, it is just not going to disappear overnight. First of all, this is something that's been going on for 30 to 40 years. The first Chinese establishment came into the DR at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. So we're talking about capital that has been accumulated for 30, 40 years. It's not going to disappear. But second of all, we have installed the legal framework and the legal practices that it will not longer be profitable. Bottom line, they will start declaring what they need to declare, because they're not going to be able to do businesses because it no longer will be profitable.
Thank you. No, it's a complex issue, and we do see it in several countries, how businesses are displaced because of this type of illicit trading. I want to open the floor for Q&A. Just identify yourself before we ask a question.
Esto se oye.
Yeah, we can hear.
Well, thank you. And just so other people can understand this, when we came into office 5 years ago, the approximate time between the ship getting to the port and the merchandise getting out of the port was 9 days. Today's approximate duration for that is 2 days, with more than 150,000 containers being dispatched in a time frame less than 24 hours. And that has also been a great catch phrase and catch reality for people to come into the DR and know that their merchandise, if you meet certain standards through our partners, we have established the OEA operation that is the economic approved operator, en español sería OEA, and we have incremented our certificates of economic approved operators, which 5 years ago was 100, it was around 200, and now we're almost at 700. And those certificate approved enterprises can use the 24-hour lane, which expedites matters in an incredible way. And it also helps us to establish logistical centers, which are places where you can get different parts of what you're going to produce, finish it, and then send it to the final destination, which is what we are now doing. And it's a growing industry, and I do believe it's going to be an incredible thing to see for the next decades.
Thank you very much, Carlos Enriquez from DHL Express. First of all, thank you for being here with us. And just want to share with you, as DHL Express, we have been in the country since 1988. Just very recently, we invested over €1 million in electric fleets. We also, this month, we launched a larger aircraft. We are now operating a daily flight with a 767. And amongst other investments in the country. And this wouldn't have been possible if it was not because of the business environment that has been highlighted. So we really want to commend not only the administration, but Congress in passing the new customs law. I think this is crucial for the Dominican Republic and for the region. But also I would like to commend the Director General for your leadership in having unprecedented dialogue with the private sector. I think this, we have never seen in all the years we have been operating in the country, we have never seen such level of trust and cooperation, and we really want to continue working that way. Just a question, because the Dominican Republic is having a key role in December in the Summit of the Americas. So what would be your expectation in terms of a regional trade facilitation agenda, and especially in customs cooperation? Thank you.
First of all, thank you for your comments, and those are food for thought, and also the private sector, public sector dialogue is not. I think it's a survival quality nowadays. It's not an asset, it's not an advantage. if you don't do it, you're not gonna generate growth. You're not gonna generate opportunity. It's impossible for the public sector to meet all the needs in order to satisfy a society. You need to empower the private sector, and I believe that comes from the top. I believe President Abinader has instructed us to do so, and I've been fortunate enough to identify and execute his vision. That being said, the Summit of the Americas, which I know that Maria Isabel and Roberto are working very, very hard on it, because it's not, people think Summit of the Americas, they think 20-something presidents giving speeches. This is a lot more than that. We're going to have a business forum that I think is going to be one of the biggest in recorded history of these summits, because it has been one of the most important things. We're investing time, money, and effort in it. And I've already confirmed from the logistical sector, certain actors, as yourself and others, that I know will participate in the business forums there. And I believe that's one of, it might not be the area generating the headlines, but I do think the business forum and the Summit of the Americas is going to be a huge opportunity to create business around the continent. Because everybody, right now, if we were to be objective about the world economy, there's a lot of worrisome around. There's a lot of change going around, and change and money don't necessarily go along. When there's a lot of changes, money tends to go under the table. And everybody's looking to see how they can secure their investment, how can they secure their work. And logistics is going to be always there, because we're going to need to supply ourselves of everything we consume. So logistics is going to be there. And in order for the logistics to get where they need to get, they're going to need a peaceful environment, they're going to need a technological environment, and they're going to need a legal environment. I cannot think of a place better situated than the Dominican Republic to do that. Because as you said, for over 60 years, there was a debate around customs law. And the reason it wasn't wasn't modernized was that every time we went into it, then the sugar producers would say, well, I want the sugar to be protected. And if it was not the sugar producers, then it was the tourism industry that said, well, but I want the imports for tourism to not pay this and that. And if it was not the tourism sector, then it was the other agricultural sectors. And the debate never ended. But when Abinader came into office, we sat down and we said, we're going to do this law. We're going to use our majority to do this law, and we're going to pass this law. And it passed, and nothing happened. There was not one single strike. There was not one single thing. Again, private sector dialogue. When we did the 24-hour program, I remember my friends from the shipping industry, they would always say, well, but what are you going to do with the syndicates? What are you going to do with the driver syndicate, with the transportation syndicates? They're not going to accept working 24 hours and this and that. We sat down with them, we talked with them, we dialogued. It was leadership, it was private sector collaboration, and we did it. And it's been running for 2 years and it's working. So I do think that the Summit of the Americas, if I were a businessman or woman, I would try to participate in that. I would try to hear out what's going to happen there, because I think it's going to be very good news for the Dominican Republic.
DHL Global Forwarding, which is the cargo side of DHL. We have a great partnership between the public and private sector. I think we've done great things. We're in a great moment, and I think that's the way to go, that dialogue that you mentioned. In these meetings here in Washington, of course, we have highlighted the trade aspects of commerce with tariffs and so on, and would like to hear your comments regarding, or your thoughts as a leader of customs, but also as a leader of government in general, of where you think Dominican Republic should be situated, how to move forward regarding the 10% tariff, regarding DR-CAFTA, regarding the sectional tariffs that might be applied now in the future also to medical devices, which is a very important part of our manufacturing sector. What's your view on that, and how should we position ourselves in the things that maybe matter to the United States, such as security or whatever your thoughts are on that?
First of all, I do think that the relationship between the United States and the Dominican Republic has to be in one of its best moments as far as I can recollect. And I've been working with other ministries in the Dominican government with the negotiations and all this new development with tariffs. And the first thing we have to say is we've been privileged. We are in the lowest bracket of established tariffs anywhere. It's us, Canada, Mexico, and a few other countries. Everybody's on top of the 10%, and we are in the 10%. So wherever you're looking in the world, you want to export from the DR, and this is the best place to export because you're paying the lowest tariffs possible. When you get into the detail of it, for example, in Mexico and other places, there's a ongoing dialogue that I believe has not been defined. Maria Isabel could correct me if it has, but I think it has not been defined for certain aspects with free trade agreement countries like Mexico, like ourselves, where not even the 10% is going to be due. So that is an ongoing dialogue, and we're going to try to get that. And I believe that with the help we've been giving the United States on the drug trade enforcement efforts, on the international community efforts, and in our fight against illicit commerce from a country that has geopolitical rivalries with the U.S. And all of those things point to the fact that we are a reliable partner. Also, the fact that we are so much invested in the whole general of the U.S. dialogue. Here we have the Vice Minister for Foreign Relations that works with the diaspora or the Dominican community here. We have over a million people in New York. We have, I don't know how much, but we have a lot in New England. We have a lot in Florida. We have a lot in other places. So the Dominican community is going to be felt in the States. And I believe that we're going to find an agreement. I believe it's not going to be a problem. And from the numbers that I'm seeing, our exports have not been hit in any sense of the word by this situation because they keep incrementing. So if they keep incrementing, it's because we're not having a problem. And you were saying about medical devices. Right now, not only the US, 70% of all medical devices consumed in Central America are produced in the Dominican Republic. I'm talking about jeringuillas and estetoscopio. I don't know how you say those words in English, but I think everybody understands. Also, I do think that we have become a powerhouse for exports in the region. I'm talking about Jamaica, I'm talking about St. Martin, I'm talking about Guyana, I'm talking about those markets also. And I do believe that we have a very long-standing alliance with the United States. And I don't think that it is changing anytime soon.
I'm just thinking because we've been in discussing this past 2 days about the relationship that the U.S. and the DR, and how can the private sector play a more specific role on making that happen, the relationship, because we do understand the 10% tariff is there and it's going to stay. But how can we support the government and the work you've been doing so we can leverage that? So the DR is seen as an important partner for the US.
I think that's an excellent question, and I'm going to try not to overextend myself what I'm going to say, but I do believe it's heartfelt, so I'm going to say it. You guys need to tell our story. The numbers are there. Sometimes political discourse goes against economic truth. And the problem is this, is that 5 years ago, we were exporting $700 million. We're now exporting 1.3 billion. That has nothing to do with political party. It's just an economical fact. And the people in logistics know that their containers 9-10 days to get out of the port. It's now 1 day or 2. When I say it, it goes this high because I'm a political activist. I'm a political actor. I have political ambitions. So my credibility is not the same as when you say it. When you say it, it gets heard. It gets heard with more strength. And I do believe that the greatest power that the private sector has is credibility. Everybody knows that you guys don't want this or that person in power. You just want to do business. So I do think that you guys need to tell our story more. And telling a story means, I don't know, paying an ad in the New York Times, doing, I don't know, doing these things, but doing them in other cities and in other places, and going to people to tell them about the Dominican miracle. It exists. It's there. The numbers are there. You take the whole Latin American continent and you look at the indicators, quality of life. Gloria Reyes is here. She runs one of the most important social assistance agency in our government. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what we did is we gave money to certain areas in order to try and moderate poverty. That's not what we're doing anymore. What we're doing is we're teaching people tasks so they can go to work. We're bringing people up from poverty to the middle state. The numbers are incredible. 5 years ago, the percentage of Dominicans in poverty, ¿cuánto eran, Gloria? It was 29%. ¿Y hoy? And today it's an 18%. That's an 11 point, and it's not the Dominican government that's saying that. It's the World Bank, it's UNESCO, it's La FAO. So tell that story and bring people to your country. That's what I think you can do more. And if I got in trouble, I'm sorry.
Time for one more question.
Hello, my name is Balmes Arias. I'm 21 years old, and I'm currently working at the World Bank. Before I ask my question, I just want to say thank you for the great presentation and everyone who took part in making this event possible. My question is, given to the rapid changes in technology, regulation, global trade, what skills do you think young lawyers should prioritize in order to make an impact and stay relevant in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a great question. I'll tell you, my kid is your age and is studying right now. And I told him like a year ago, I remember this, I translated this story from what happened to me to what I think is going to happen to your generation. When I was studying abroad and I did this, I was studying in Europe and I was 20 something. And I remember one of my thesis advisors back then, I asked him, what should I do my thesis on? And he went back and said, you live in the Caribbean. I said, yes, I know where I live. And he said, if you live in the Caribbean and you're not studying or doing something with tourism, you're losing your time. That's what he told me. It was 25 years ago, 20 something years ago. I always remember that story because I was mad when he told me that. I said, okay, so the only thing we can do is tourism? But I remember that, and time proved him right. Time proved him right. Now I think, and I told this to my kid, and I tell this to you, if I were in my early 20s, I would try to study something that had to do with the logistical supply chain. Because the world will need secure supply chains. And that is an incredible field area for lawyers. Maritime law is a very rich thing. It has many different things. It's a very workable arena. Also, supply chain initiatives will need a lot of technology. We'll need a lot of artificial intelligence. We'll need a lot of economists. We'll need a lot of computer experts. So I do think that the logistics center, and you can look at the biggest, when I went to Dubai a couple of years ago, and when you think about that area of the world, you always think oil and gas. When I was there and I was meeting to some of the people that work in customs in Dubai, I was surprised by the fact that they don't have one drop of oil in Dubai. A lot of people don't know this. There's not one drop of oil. Abu Dhabi, which is another city in that country, does have oil, but Dubai doesn't have a drop of oil. And it has the biggest free trade zone in the whole of the Middle East. It has the biggest port in the whole of the Middle East. So everybody, when they eat or drink something in the Middle East, it probably goes through Dubai. So what I'm saying is, I believe that the future of our economy has to do with logistics. I believe it's our gold or our oil. And I believe 20 to 30 years from now, in this table, when they come to the interdialogue, we're going to see a lot more of the logistical industries represented in this table. Because I think that's where money's going to be made, and I think that's where a lot of things are going to happen.
Yes, go ahead.
Those things the past 5 years. What's your next steps?
That was my question.
Well, you're going to get me in trouble, but first of all, I'm gonna do this in anecdote. I have a lot of friends from my whole life, and my wife is here, who's been married to me 25 years for some reason. And Cesar and I went to college together. I always loved politics, and I always worked in politics. But by 2010, 29, I got tired of losing, and I was making money in my legal firm, and I was out of politics. And a friend of mine came to see me and told me that he wanted to do something for his country and that he wanted me to be a member of his team. And that person was Luis Abinader. He convinced me to go along with him. He convinced me to get back into this thing. And he's not over yet. He has 3 years remaining in his term. I think he's done incredible things. And I'm going to help him out, and I'm going to follow his lead until we can finish this, moving strong, moving forward, and having established the fact that the Abinader administration changed the economical history of the Dominican Republic, which I believe we are doing. That being said, I don't believe I'm going to go into the private sector anytime soon.
I'm not going to welcome you on the next one. You took my question away. Good thing you didn't say who you were. So, since I was going to ask a question, let me ask you before we close. What is your outlook on the economy next year? Because it's, as our colleagues from the private sector mentioned, I mean, we do see a bleak or somewhat bleak global economy in 2026. In the work I do on money transfers, remittances, my projection is close to zero growth to negative growth in the flow of money, which is this year is going to reach $200 billion to Latin America. So where do you see the DR positioning itself in that context?
Well, before I give you my opinion, I'm going to give you the International Monetary Fund's opinion, which just like 10 days ago made a report on the world economy and put the Dominican Republic's forecast at 5% growth, which was the second biggest in the whole of Latin America. And that, to me, that's the biggest, because the first is Argentina, and we all know that President Milei is coming back from an economical catastrophe. So I don't believe it's exactly comparable. So the Dominican Republic has been rated as the most optimistic forecast in our whole region. Me, myself, I do think that 2025 has been a challenging year. We have all underperformed. The US economy, the European economy, the Japanese economy, everybody has underperformed. Even the IMF has changed the forecast for 2025 because there has been disruption in the economic trends with the tariffs, with the war in Europe, and with what happened with Israel and Iran and all that went into the mix with certain uncertainty. As I said, when there's uncertainty, people don't invest. And when people don't invest, people don't buy. And when people don't buy, there's not economic growth. I do believe 2026 has a better outlook. The world looks, yesterday, there were good news in the peace outlook, and also the tariff situation has already been, it has started to be grounded, and everything has started to fall into the place it will be. So that's going to give some certainty to the world economy. Also, the Federal Reserve just lowered the interest rate 20 days ago. That will generate economic activity in the U.S. market. And when we have an old saying, when the U.S. economy gets a cold, we get pneumonia. And it goes the other way around. When the U.S. economy gets a jump, we get a jump start. So I do think that 2026 is looking very good because also within our internal planning, our revenues are coming in according to plan. We have already now we have a new budget that just went into law that is going to get like 30 billion pesos into capital investment. That one of the thing our critics have repeated is that we have not been making the capital investment that the economy needs, which we think we have, but we have done something that is called human capital, which is what I was saying about Gloria's job, which is investing in people so they can invest in themselves. So we're not giving money away. We're giving tools for people to work. I believe that is going to be reflected in the 2026 economy. I believe that the world stabilization will be reflected, and I believe that our capital investment in infrastructure and in others will be reflected. And I do think that the 5 or 4% mark is achievable. I believe it will be achieved, and I believe we will also have a couple of electrical generators come into place, which has also generated some disruption locally for us. So I believe starting in January, we're going to have the electrical supply behind us, and we will also have more stability. So I do believe that the 2026 is we have a framework where investment will happen, and when things are it's going to be a lot better year than 2025 is my think.
I'm glad you have quite a positive outlook, and I hope you're right. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Ambassador Castillo, Canciller Alvarez, and all other colleagues for being here. Definitely, I was trained when we were doing trade economics. La República Dominicana era parte de las economías postre. And it's been a long road from that to today, exactly what you say, investing in the human capital.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Manuel. I just want to say thank you to our congresswoman from San Cristobal and from La Capital, and also to our congressman from La Capital, Santo Domingo, and also from Asua, César Ignacio, y también Melina y Montserrat. They're here, they're part of our delegation, and they have done incredible jobs as legislators. I just wanted them to be recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo, and thank you everyone to come. Ambassador, also want to recognize the Ambassador of the Dominican Republic to the OAS, present with us. And well, with that saying, thank you very much for coming, and hope to see you before 2028. So I can ask other questions. That will be